Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just officially welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Sung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here. Sawadee Kap. Today's class is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original words of the Buddha. I'll explain to you guys what that is after we do our meditation because we start this class with meditation. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with chanting. We ease into the meditation with some chanting. And if you'd like to see these chants and even chant along, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You're welcome to help yourself to get one because we chant in the Pali language and you'll see the English translations there. Yeah, you're welcome to get one whenever you like. These chants, I suspect, weren't actually created by the Buddha during his lifetime because when you read the chants, you're going to see a lot of admiration and respect and gratitude for the Buddha. And a Buddha doesn't walk around with ego and arrogance and pride and teach people to chant things like this. But instead, during his lifetime, he used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory because every 2 weeks, his students would come together and recite his teachings word for word for word because everything was oral during his life. They didn't have any written documentation of his teachings because the technology to write things down existed in China, but it hadn't made its way to that part of the world yet. So this new technology of writing things down didn't exist in that region of the world. So they just spoke orally. And every 2 weeks, they would come together and recite his teachings word for word for word. So this is where chanting came from. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. You're not invoking the spirit of the Buddha or anything like that. That's not what the Buddha actually taught. He just used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. So there's nothing mystical or magical here in the teachings of the Buddha. You're just training your mind to be able to eliminate the pollutions that are causing the discontent feelings. You're moving the mind to this enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. So I use these chants in order to ease into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Then there's going to be a period of time where I'll be guiding you and helping you to be able to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Those of us here at the temple and everyone online will just all be meditating together, and you'll hear me guiding you in that meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where we're just meditating together and it's quiet. I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds here and there because it's not possible to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. So you'll probably hear a couple of sounds here and there, but you can just focus your mind on the breath and train the mind to let go of anything that it might be thinking about or holding on to as a result of that. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start the class. I'll explain to you what the Pali Canon and English study group is and, what we're doing here at this temple. Then, in terms of body position, some of you guys might be interested to have some guidance on how to meditate in terms of your body position. There's actually 4 positions that the Buddha taught. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would use these different positions at different times for different reasons. And I teach this at different programs and courses and retreats that I share. But for now, I'll just give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position because that's what most people are learning in. Usually when people are sitting, they're either sitting on the floor, in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair, or something like this. For those of you guys sitting on the floor, you might just sit with your legs lightly crossed. If you have them too tight, this will impede the circulation. It'll cause pain in the body, and you're not interested in the body being painful. So if you just have your legs lightly crossed, this is really helpful. Some people even like to put their legs off the mat, and this gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and it allows the circulation to flow. So this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way. It's about finding what works best for you. So you can sit however you like, truly. What I'm sharing with you is just guidance to maybe help guide you along the way and seeing some different options for yourself. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is helpful for you and you find it comfortable, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. This isn't possible because we all have different bodies and we're going to find different things to be comfortable. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people like to put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So whatever is comfortable for you with the lower body and hands and arms, whether you're on the floor, in a chair, or however you're sitting, just make yourself comfortable with the lower body. And then in terms of the upper body, you would like this to be erect. By being erect, the mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you are real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you would like the upper body to be erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. Not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easier for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to ease into the meditation with chanting, which you guys are welcome to join along in, and then I'm going to come back in with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakevanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakevata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Namasati Satatavap Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังมหากัมวันตังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหากัมวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหากัมวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะกัมวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I would like to once again welcome all of you guys that are here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online. Nice to see you guys this morning. Welcome to everyone who joined us since we started meditating. As I mentioned, today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the words of the Buddha. But first, let me just share with you guys a little bit about what the teachings of the Buddha are. The teachings of the Buddha are to guide you towards this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these feelings and others are eliminated from the enlightened mind. And this is occurring because you're applying tools and techniques to uproot certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. By eliminating these pollutions out of the mind, you'll experience not only the elimination of discontent feelings and that peace and joy, but your mind will be focused, concentrated, you'll have clear mind, you'll have deep memory, the mind will be functioning optimally. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom. You won't be having bitterness and hostility and harshness in your relationships any longer. You won't even be in a bad mood. By the time you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings to arise, you won't even be in a bad mood anymore. And this comes through learning teachings, examining them, and investigating them. This comes from reflecting on those same teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice the teachings, integrating them into your life and training your mind and uprooting these pollutions out of the mind. And as you do so, meditation is important. This is one technique that you need in order to train your mind, but you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment. You're going to need other things. And that's what this Pali Canon and English study group is about, and all the other courses and retreats that I teach is typically what I'm doing is teaching in a traditional method where I teach for maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up to questions, teach for another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up to questions. And this is where people usually start, and they're developing a foundation in the path to enlightenment. But then they kind of migrate into and move into a program like this where you're studying directly with the words of the Buddha. And then there's a teacher that's more guiding you and giving you advice along the way and helping you see what you need to understand in order to progress towards enlightenment. It's always your journey to enlightenment. You're the one who's progressing to enlightenment, but you need help from teachers and guides. You wouldn't actually be able to get to enlightenment by yourself. It's only a Buddha who would be able to do that. And a Buddha is a very rare and unique individual in the world that you're not a Buddha. You would need help from a teacher or guide to be able to get to enlightenment. So as you come to these classes or courses and retreats, you're never interested in believing anything. You don't believe the teachings of the Buddha. They're not about a bunch of beliefs and then hoping something good happens when you die. They're also not about rules or commandments. So if everybody follows these rules, then the world will become a more peaceful place. Instead, what he did is he's teaching you the way the world is. And by understanding the way the world is around you, you'll be able to navigate the world more wisely. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties. This is why the mind experiences the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other discontent feelings. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, the mind will blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. You might have experienced this where you're blaming other people perhaps for what you're experiencing in life. And as long as you keep doing this, you'll never actually solve your issues, because the mind's ego in the lack of wisdom is thinking that everyone else is the problem, when in reality, it's what's going on in your own mind that is causing these struggles and difficulties. And you can transform all of this. No need to feel guilty or shameful or anything like this, but just recognizing the truth. And the Buddha teaches you the truth that you can independently verify that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. Essentially, the mind has this craving, desires, attachments, longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And if the mind gets what it wants, then it experiences pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, then it experiences these painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and feelings like this. You can look at your life, and in a recent situation where you've been angry or frustrated, you can see that there was something your mind wanted. It was longing for something. You were expecting something. And if you would have got that, you would have been happy. But since the mind didn't get that, it got these painful feelings of sadness, anger, and frustration. These are what's called conditional feelings. The mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. So for example, if it's sunny outside, you might be so happy and so excited. But then when it's raining, you might be sad or frustrated. Or if your bank account balance is here, you might be happy. But then when it goes down here, you might be sad or frustrated. If you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe you're so happy. But then when you guys break up, maybe you're sad or frustrated. And the mind oftentimes misunderstands and thinks that that's love. But that's not the love that's causing your sadness. What it is the mind is craving permanence. It's longing, it's yearning, it's holding on, it's wanting things to be permanent. And you live in this impermanent world. Everything around you is constantly changing. So as long as your mind is craving permanence, which is what the unenlightened mind does, sometimes it will get what it wants and it'll be happy, but that happiness is temporary. It will arise, change, and fade away. And then when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings like sadness, frustration, and others. So you can actually transform your mind and essentially rewire the mind through training where you no longer form conditioned feelings, that you don't form your feelings based on some condition. That if this thing is happening, I will be happy. And if this thing isn't happening, I will be sad or frustrated. This is what the unenlightened mind is doing. So the Buddha is bringing to your awareness what's actually hurting you, because you can heal from what hurts you, but you need to know what's actually hurting you. And as long as you believe that it's something external that's hurting you, then you'll never actually solve your problems, because you're going to be looking in the wrong place and doing things that aren't actually conducive to your healing. You might be pushing people away or pushing the situation away. And if you're pushing people away, you can see that doesn't solve the problem, because you keep getting agitated or annoyed or frustrated about something else. It's only a matter of time. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And this doesn't solve the problem. This is like an animal growling and roaring and showing its teeth at someone, trying to fear them into doing things your way. Or you might be putting your expectations on people and trying to control people to do things your way. Again, no need to feel guilty or shameful here. This is just the mind's lack of wisdom, of it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand, that inside one's own mind this is what's causing it to experience these discontent feelings. So when you come to understand that it's not something external that's causing the difficulties and struggles in your life, and you look inward, and the Buddha helps you to be able to do this through the teachings that he shares and the tools and techniques that he shares, you can actually transform your mind, because you understand the real problem, you understand the cause of that problem, you understand the elimination of it, and you understand the path forward of how to completely eliminate it. And he gives you the tools and techniques of how to do that. So in all the programs that I teach, they're all based on the original words of the Buddha. So the foundational programs, the harmony of relationship programs, the experiencing the jhanas and the 4 stages of enlightenment, any of the retreats that I teach, it's all based on the original words of the Buddha. But in this program, what we do is we specifically study the words of the Buddha. I have a book series here that the first volume is the foundational text that helps you to develop your foundation in the path to enlightenment. And on Sundays and Wednesdays, I slowly go through this book chapter by chapter over a 7-month period. So each Sunday, I teach a chapter in that book. And tomorrow, we're going to be learning chapter 17, which is titled Eliminating Fears. Are you really scared? I'm going to teach people how to eliminate their fear, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you have no fear in your mind. So that program repeats continuously every 7 months, and you don't have to start at the beginning. You can start anywhere you like, and you'll be able to gradually learn the foundational teachings. And then I have courses each month that help you develop the foundation in the path to enlightenment and things like that as well. And then in this program, I teach volumes 2 through 13. We go over a year and a half. We slowly go through volumes 2 through 13 to gradually learn the teachings. And we actually just restarted this program. And again, you don't have to start at the beginning, but we just restarted it a few weeks ago. And right now we're in volume 2, chapters 31 through 40. And what we do is I invite a student either here at the temple or online to be able to read the chapter. And when we say a chapter, it's actually quite short. This one, you can see, is about a page and a quarter, right? And then what you've got is you've got the words of the Buddha, and that's what is read in the class. And then there's this reference which takes you back to the original teachings of the Buddha in the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is 45 large volumes of books. That's about this large, each book. And each individual book contains his original teachings. And this is a translation of that. And this reference takes you back to that original source text. And then what you've got is you've got words from me to help you reflect on what it is that the Buddha is sharing and how to integrate it into your life to actually get benefit from it. Because the Buddha teaches very clear, very concise, very precise. You don't need to interpret his teachings, but you would benefit from having an experienced teacher and guide, a practitioner who's actually been practicing the teachings for a period of time to guide you through this so that you can understand. Because some of these teachings, they're related to other teachings that you might not be aware of. So by having an experienced teacher and experienced practitioner guide you through this, it will help you to be able to learn. So that's what you have here in all these books. And they're all available at no cost. You can download them for free on our website. You can get them here by just reimbursing us for our printing cost. You can take it and go print it yourself if you like. And you can order them on Amazon if you have access to Amazon. So what we do is I have a student volunteer, anybody here, you can volunteer to read this. And then I will share some teachings on that for 5 minutes or so. And then I'll open up to any and all questions that you have. If there's someone here at the temple that would like to volunteer to read this, or if you have questions when you get to questions, we have microphones here. Pat's going to show you where they're at. I guess he's going going to volunteer for the first chapter. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button, the lights come on, wait a second or two, and just hold it up to your chin. And then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online too. If you talk here at the temple without a microphone, the folks online won't be able to hear you. And then if you have a microphone, you can just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have something, and you can share the microphone with them. And then for those of you guys in Zoom, if you would like to read, you can electronically raise your hand and then unmute your microphone, and then you'll be able to read the chapter. And same thing with questions. For those of you guys in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. And if you're in Zoom, you can ask questions by electronically raising your hand. So here we have this chapter in Volume 2, Chapter 31, which is titled "A Strong Post or Pillar is a Designation for Mindfulness." And it looks like Pat's going to volunteer to read that. So go ahead, sir.
Strong post or pillar is a designation of mindfulness. And how, monks, is there restraint? Here, having seen a form with the eye, having heard a sound with the ear, having smelt an odor with the nose, having tasted a flavor with the tongue, having touched a physical object with the body, having recognized a mental object with the mind, a monk is not intent upon a pleasing form and not repelled by a displeasing form. He resides, having set up mindfulness of the body, with a measureless mind, and he understands as it really is that liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states are eliminated without remainder. It is in such a way that there is restraint. Suppose, monks, a man would catch 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds and tie them by a strong rope. He would catch a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and monkey, and tie each by a strong rope. Having done so, he would bind them to a strong post or pillar. Then those 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds would each pull in the direction of its own feeding ground and domain. The snake would pull one way, thinking, "Let me enter an anthill." The crocodile would pull another way, thinking, "Let me enter the water." The bird would pull another way, thinking, "Let me fly up to the sky." The dog would pull another way, thinking, "Let me enter a village." The jackal would pull another way, thinking, "Let me enter a charnel ground." The monkey would pull another way, thinking, "Let me enter a forest." Now when these 6 animals become worn out and fatigued, they would stand close to that post or pillar. They would sit down there. They would lie down there. So too, monks, when a monk has developed and cultivated mindfulness directed to the body, the eye does not pull in the direction of agreeable forms, nor are disagreeable forms repulsive. The ear does not pull in the direction of agreeable sounds, nor are disagreeable sounds repulsive. The nose does not pull in the direction of agreeable odors, nor are disagreeable odors repulsive. The tongue does not pull in the direction of agreeable flavors, nor are disagreeable flavors repulsive. The body does not pull in the direction of agreeable physical objects, nor are disagreeable physical objects repulsive. The mind does not pull in the direction of agreeable mental objects, nor are disagreeable mental objects repulsive. It is in such a way that there is restraint. A strong post or pillar, this, monks, is a designation for mindfulness directed to the body. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. We will develop and cultivate mindfulness directed to the body, make it our vehicle, make it our basis, stabilize it, exercise ourselves in it, and fully perfect it. Thus should you train yourselves.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what the Buddha is talking about here is this analogy to help you understand what you're doing with the mind as part of your journey to enlightenment. There's multiple aspects of the path to enlightenment that you would need to learn and understand and practice and develop in order to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. One of the key things that you're doing is eliminating what's called central desire. What central desire is where the mind has this longing, yearning through the sense bases, wanting permanently agreeable contact. What I mean by that is there's the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself, where the mind is now longing through these doorways, wanting permanently agreeable contact. So if you see something you agree with, you might get happy or excited about that. But then when you see something you disagree with, you might get frustrated or agitated or annoyed because you see this thing as disagreeable. This is because of the craving, desire, attachment. The mind's wanting things to be a certain way permanently. The mind's wanting things to be permanently agreeable. And the same thing is happening through the ears. The mind is longing, yearning through the ears, wanting to hear things that are permanently agreeable. And when it hears something disagreeable, it's repulsed by this, as the Buddha is describing. So let me give you an example. Say you're sitting in your car at a red light, at a traffic light, and somebody pulls up to you with some music that you particularly like. Maybe it's rap or hip hop, and you're like, all right, that's my jam. All right, let's go. Come on, let's have a good time. Let's party, right? And now, for that 3 minutes that you're sitting at that light, everything's really great. You're so happy. You're so excited. But now you pull up to the next traffic light. Somebody pulls up with a different type of music, maybe some instrumental music or classical music or something that you find repulsive, right? Or maybe heavy metal music. I don't know, whatever your preferences are or your lack of the preferences, whatever you see disagreeable. Now you hear this music and it's disagreeable to you and you become frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And now you think that it's that person that's causing that frustration. When in reality, it's your own mind. It's your mind having a craving, desire, attachment, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. This is the mind's central desire, longing, yearning through these sense bases, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. And you live in an impermanent world. As long as you have cravings, desires, attachments in your mind, you're going to see some things as agreeable and you're going to see some things as disagreeable. So there might be certain foods in terms of the tongue that you find agreeable to you and you really gravitate towards those foods. But if you taste something that is disagreeable, you might, I'm so repulsed by that. That's what the mind's doing because of its central desire. And you're going to need to eliminate this so that the mind can just be perfectly content no matter what. Whether you're sitting there at the traffic light and someone's playing some rap and hip hop music, or whether they're playing instrumental or heavy metal or whatever it is, you can be completely joyful and peaceful because you know that these things are all impermanent and you're not going to be able to hear things that you permanently agree with. It's just not possible. So as long as the mind has central desire, it will see things as agreeable and disagreeable, and it will be attracted to things that are agreeable, and it will be repulsed by things that are disagreeable, pushing these things away. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to train your mind in breathing mindfulness meditation, which is what we just did, to train your mind to focus on the breath. And then when you focus on the breath and the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go, training your mind to be able to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind's holding on. It's wanting things to be a certain way. It doesn't know how to let go. Because when you were with that boyfriend or girlfriend, you were holding on and holding on and holding on. And then finally you guys broke up. Your mind was still holding on. That's why you felt miserable and you felt bored or lonely or sad or angry afterwards. But at some point you were like, you know what? If he wants to be with somebody else, so be it. And you let go. And then your mind became peaceful. Or you know what? If she would like to move across the country and be in another city where I can't see her, okay, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where the peacefulness came in, because your mind let go. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is there not to eliminate your thoughts, because sometimes people think that's the case when they hear the guidance during this meditation. The meditation is there to help you to be able to train your mind to let go. Even an enlightened being will have occasional thoughts during their meditation. But the difference is that in the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts sometimes. It'll be thought. Oh man, your mind's like spinning. There's so many thoughts. Or you'll indulge in a thought Follow that for a period of time, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath. And your mind will let that go. So an enlightened being will notice their thoughts right away, and then they'll be able to easily let it go. And then there'll be this long period of time where there's peacefulness and stillness and calmness in the mind. An enlightened mind is always peaceful and always steady and calm, but the mind is quieted and still. So you'll still have thoughts because you need thoughts, but an enlightened being in meditation will notice it right away and they'll be able to easily cut it off and let it go. So what the Buddha is teaching you is in order to restrain your mind in day-to-day life, where you're coming in contact with things, you're going to need to train your mind and have like this post or this pillar. And that's what your breath is during your meditation. That's the post and the pillar. And now these 6 animals are pulling in these opposite directions. The monkey's going one way, the dog's going another way, the bird's going another way. They're all pulling in these different directions, but they keep getting yanked back and yanked back and yanked back by this rope. And now eventually the animals are like, you know what? We're tied to this post and pillar. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to sit here and be still by this post and pillar. I'm not going to pull anymore. This is what your mind's going to do. With consistent, ongoing training, you'll accumulate the benefits of every time you're in meditation. If you're focused on the breath and the mind pulls and you bring it back and yank it back, it's coming back to that post or pillar, the breath. And eventually, over time, many months and many years of training, your mind will eventually just be still and calm and quieted, and it'll sit down by that post or pillar. Not just in meditation, but in daily life too, where you see your mind is longing, yearning through the eyes or the ears or the nose or the tongue or the body itself or the mind. When you see this longing and yearning, you pull it back. So say you're in the mall, you're walking through the mall, and there's somebody walking in front of you, and maybe this man or woman is just so handsome or so beautiful, and your eyes are fixated on their shape and their smell of their perfume or their cologne, and you're looking at their hair and all this other stuff. Your mind's longing, yearning, like, oh, I just wish I had that person in my life. Well, in that case, you need to pull the mind back. You need to restrain the mind, because if you allow the mind to long and yearn like that, it's only going to be happy if you have this person. And if you don't have this person, you'll be sad or frustrated. So you're going to need to restrain the mind and pull it back like that post or pillar. So in meditation, you're training your mind with the breath as the post and pillar and cutting off and letting go and bringing the mind back to the breath. But then in daily life, you're going to need to do the same thing. That where you see the mind longing, yearning, you're going to need to pull it back. So say you walk past this mall and now you see a brand new pair of shoes in the window of the store. And it's like, oh, a brand new pair of shoes. Oh, yes, I want those shoes so bad. Oh, those look so beautiful. Oh, I can't wait to get them. And now you see your mind's longing, yearning, it's craving, it's desiring. If you go in the store and they have your size, you'll be so happy and excited. You got these brand new shoes. Yay. But then when they get old or someone steals them or they get damaged, you'll be frustrated. Or if you go into the store and they don't have your size, you'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated and annoyed because you're wanting this so badly. So where you see your mind longing, yearning, it's the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind itself. These 6 sense spaces or these 6 animals are pulling in these opposite directions, and you need to be able to yank it back and yank it back and yank it back. And you'll get more and more control over your mind this way, and now your mind can be disciplined. So there's no harm in buying a pair of shoes. But if you're doing it out of craving, you might have 30, 40, 50 pairs of shoes, maybe even going into debt. And how you got to need to ask yourself is, how many pairs of shoes can you wear at one time? Can you really wear 30 or 40 or 50 pairs of shoes? The reason why I shared this with you is because I used to have a lot of shoes. I used to have plenty of shoes, right? I had so many different shoes. And now I just have one pair essentially because that's all I wear, right? I just have this one pair of shoes essentially. That's all I need, right? It's very expensive to feed your cravings, your desires, your attachments, because the mind has this unquenchable thirst, this central desire where it's never satisfied. It always wants something else. It's the next new shiny object waiting around the corner. The mind's feeling certain painful feelings. It's like, I know what I need. I need a new house. Let me look for a new house. And now the mind will chase after that. Oh, I know what I need. A new car. That's what I need. Or new motorbike. Let me chase after that for a little while. Oh, I know what I need. I need some more money. That's what'll fix everything. The money. That's what I need is more money. Oh, I know what I need. A boyfriend or girlfriend. That's going to fix everything if I get a boyfriend or girlfriend. And the mind just longs and yearns and thinks something external is going to provide lasting experiencing satisfaction. And you're going to need to learn how to restrain your mind. There's no harm in these kinds of things, right? You need a pair of shoes. You're going to need some money. You're going to need perhaps a partner if you would like to have a life partner in your life. You might need these types of things. But it's when the mind is basing its inner feelings on these things that the mind then experiences its discontentedness, that it can only be happy when these particular things are occurring. And the more expectations, the more wants you have in your mind, the less and less amount of time that you can be happy, because it needs to have this condition met, and 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 then I will be happy, right? If my bank account is this, if the weather is this, if my mom and dad do this, if this situation is happening, then I will be happy. But that's just sabotaging your mind, because now you're creating more and more conditions, more and more expectations, where when you eradicate all of this out of your mind, you can be peaceful and joyful all the time. It's called unconditioned happiness, where you can be happy unconditionally. And that's what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do. So he's giving you this analogy to be able to help you see, to focus on the breath. And notice that he's talking about mindfulness of the body. Down here, he's talking about cultivating mindfulness of the body. What he's talking about here is that in order to be aware of these cravings, desires, attachments that are arising, prior to your discontent feeling, prior to you getting angry or sad or frustrated, or even happy and excited and all these other conditioned feelings, there's going to be a bodily sensation that is arising. You might not be aware of it right now, but think about when you get angry or frustrated. There's some bodily sensations that are occurring. You might feel tingling in the body. You might feel tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat. You might feel heat in the face. You might feel pressure in the skull. This is an early warning system that you have, that the mind is getting ready to get angry. You're getting ready to get frustrated. You're about to get that feeling of anger. You haven't gotten it yet. It's just bodily sensations. So you need to build this awareness or this mindfulness of these bodily sensations that are occurring because of your craving, desire, attachments, because of your sensual desire, wanting things to be a certain way. When they're that way, you'll get these conditioned pleasant feelings. And when they're not that way, you'll get these painful feelings. So there's these bodily sensations that are cluing you in that the mind is about to form this conditioned feeling. And you have an opportunity to cut it off and let it go. That's yanking the mind back. That's what the Buddha is teaching you, is to yank the mind back. So when your mind is giving you that early warning system with the bodily sensations, it's basically saying, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And if you allow that to happen, the mind's going to be like, conditioned feeling. Right? And it's either happy, excited, or it's sad or frustrated. And now you got a real problem to deal with because you got to get this out of the mind. But if you can cut that off and let it go before it becomes a feeling, now you can transform your mind that it no longer forms a conditioned feeling. And this is the gradual transformation. So rather than getting conditional happiness, where you can only be happy when certain conditions arise, and that happiness or certain conditions are existing, and that happiness arises, changes, and fades away, and it's only temporary, so therefore it's displeasing anyway. Instead, you can eradicate that and get to the permanent happiness or the permanent joy, and that's what the enlightened mental state is. So developing awareness of these bodily sensations is so very important. It's very key. If you can be aware of these bodily sensations sooner and sooner and cut it off easier and easier, this is going to transform your mind. By the time you get to that point where every single time you have a bodily sensation, you can notice it and cut it off and let it go, you're about 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment at that point. Enlightenment is very nearby. It's very close. So you need to be able to develop this in meditation, where you're aware of the mind, yes, but you're also aware of these bodily sensations associated with the arising of discontentedness, so that then in daily life, wherever you see that occurring, you can cut it off and let it go. You're not suppressing your feelings. Sometimes people think that when they hear me describe this, what you're actually doing is you're cutting it off and letting it go before it becomes a feeling. It's just a bodily sensation. And this is what will transform your mind. So any questions on this particular chapter? This is just one aspect of the path to enlightenment. You guys can ask questions here. Yeah, if you could get a microphone, or if you guys are online, if Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put that in the comments section. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. Yes, ma'am. I think it's not on. There's a gray button. It just takes a second for the lights to come on.
No. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. One of them is about if you could talk a little bit more about like letting it go, because I think it's going to be really hard to, even in meditation, I tried to let it go, but I just kept coming back. So I'm wondering what was your Buddha's advice on how to learn to let go?
Sure. So the way that you train your mind to let go is through the breathing mindfulness meditation and also through generosity. You need to be practicing giving and sharing, training your mind to let go. Because oftentimes when there's craving, desire, attachment, the mind is very selfish and it holds on to things. So every day you need to be practicing the giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. And you're slowly, proactively training your mind with breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity. And that's training your mind to let go, let go, let go. And then some of these cravings, desires, attachments, they're quite deeply rooted in the mind. So while we say cut it off and let it go, a lot of these are cut it off and cut it off and cut it off and cut it off over multiple months, even years, some of these cravings, before the mind will actually let it go. These cravings, desires, attachments are also oftentimes very stubborn. They stick around for quite a while. You'll have some cravings for multiple years that the mind hasn't fully let go of, but you're gradually reducing the amount of holding on that it does. This is what the Buddha refers to as maturing and release. The mind needs to mature and mature and mature and mature and mature before it will finally release. Essentially, you need to accumulate the benefits of your meditation, of your generosity, and training your mind using the entire Eightfold Path. This is a core central teaching, if you haven't studied it with the original words of the Buddha, that you're going to need to know the Eightfold Path with the original words of the Buddha and practice that daily, so that then the mind can mature and ultimately the craving, desire, attachment can release, because it's accumulated enough benefits to then be able to release it.
Thank you. I have another question. You talked about when we notice some bodily sensation arising, cut them off and let them go. And I'm thinking about there's a bit of difference between, I guess we can have those desires and attachment, but there can also be like actual need. For example, I'm noticing in my body I'm feeling thirsty. I might not have attachment or particular desire, but I have that need. And I'm just thinking, is it the same process, or is it more around like noticing whether we are becoming too attached, or it's more unhealthy? I don't know, like how to call it. Like, I'm just trying to think about whether there are times it's okay to be listening to that and meeting that need versus distinguishing between when we're getting too attached and too, getting into the desire too much.
Okay, these are two different things. So a need is something you need in order to be able to survive, like water, or food, or shelter, or clothing. And these are things that you need. There is the ability for the mind to crave and long and yearn for these things, but it would be unwise to do so. So a need is something like a basic necessity: food, clothing, shelter, medical care. These are the things that you essentially need in order to survive. But the mind, being a master at craving, desire, attachment, it can actually crave water. Like, I'll give you an example. Say you have a liter of water and now you're on your way to a hiking trail. You're out on the hiking trail, 30 minutes into your hike, and you realize, oh my goodness, I forgot my water. My water. And you run back to your car, maybe twisting your ankle, spraining your ankle, slinging the door open to the car, getting the water. Water, 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 water. But you could also be out on the hiking trail and you realize, I forgot my water. I should make my way back to the car and get the water. And now you calmly make your way back. So the object itself isn't what the craving, desire, attachment is. It's inside the mind. It's the longing, yearning for that object. So you need to be able to clearly see, what is a need and what is just the mind wanting and trying to satisfy its cravings, desires, attachments in order to get that pleasant feelings. So once you see your needs, you'll actually see that you actually need very little things in the world. You don't really need a whole lot. And this is where you can live a very comfortable existence, because you're not chasing after your cravings, spending this absorbent amount of money, And now you have to work in order to acquire all of that, to be able to acquire all those things that the mind's wanting. So that's the difference between a need and a want, is something that you need in order to sustain your life, and you just gradually work towards acquiring those things rather than chasing after it. In terms of the bodily sensations of like the body being thirsty, this isn't the bodily sensations that I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is the craving, desire, attachments in the mind, that when you have a craving, desire, attachment in your mind, the mind will experience this arising of bodily sensations before the mind gets a conditioned pleasant feeling or painful feeling. So if you can think about times where you experienced anger and frustration, there were bodily sensations that were occurring because of that prior to the mind experiencing the feeling. There was cravings, desires, attachments in your mind where you wanted things to be a certain way and they weren't that way. And because of that craving, these bodily sensations arise. So if the body is experiencing thirst and there needs to be thirst, that's an indication to the mind like, hey, you should look for some water. Or same thing with hunger. This is a bodily sensation, a bodily pain, we might call it, in order to trigger the mind and say, hey, you need to be looking for some food. But when that is occurring, that oftentimes people get grumpy and irritable. And this isn't because of a biological thing. This is the mind craving permanent comfort of the body. The mind's craving for the body to be permanently comfortable. And now when you experience that hunger pain, the mind might get grumpy and irritable because it's craving this permanent comfort in the body. So it's not actually biological that you're experiencing grumpiness. If you are hungry and you start getting grumpy, it's actually the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. And there are bodily sensations associated with that grumpiness arising or the anger and frustration arising, but it's not the hunger pain itself or the thirst itself. That's not related to the cravings, desires, attachments. That is a biological thing, that the body doesn't have food that it needs, and now there's a little bit of pain there, and that's the indication. It says, hey, you should start looking for some food. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, any other questions on this one? You have a question, ma'am? Are you going to the bathroom? You have a question? Oh, okay. I thought maybe you're going to the bathroom. Doche, can you turn that mic off? Thank you so much. That's the other one.
It's for my friend.
Oh, okay.
Okay. She has a question.
Okay.
Since she was born, she was afraid of snake.
Okay.
So even though she saw the snake skin, she would be terrified, scared. And because she was really scared of a snake, and as the next year in China, the zodiac sign is snake, so she didn't want to have a snake baby. So she wanted to know how could she get rid of the fear.
Sure. So this is what I'm going to teach tomorrow, but it's actually connected to this as well, so I can teach it to you here. So what the mind's doing in this case is it's having sensual desire. Sensual desire is the longing, yearning through the sense bases, wanting to have agreeable contact and getting pleasant feelings when you have agreeable contact. And when you have disagreeable contact, the mind is repulsed by that, right? So the mind's craving this permanently agreeable contact. So when you see a butterfly, you're probably happy and excited. But when you see a snake, the mind perceives that as disagreeable because of its craving. The mind permanently wants to see certain beings, and now the mind is getting fearful. That fear is arising because of its craving, desire, attachment to see things like butterflies. It doesn't ever want to see a snake. And now when you see a snake, there's this fear that arises. So the way that you get rid of it is proactively. You need to be training your mind with breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. That's a given that you need to be able to do that. But then you would like to put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. I would encourage you to look at pictures of snakes, right? Like on the internet or in a magazine. And you look at these and you're going to feel the fear arising, and you cut that off and let it go. And you're going to feel uncomfortable and you cut that off and let it go. But eventually you'll be able to look at pictures, and now you won't be fearful of snakes. So now you take it to the next situation. You take it now to like a museum where snakes are like preserved, right? And now you look at these snakes, and again, you might notice some discontentedness starting to arise, and you cut that off and let it go, and you cut that off and let it go, and you put the mind in the situation. Then eventually you could go to like a zoo or a pet store or something like this, where they actually have real live snakes crawling around. and you start looking at them. Yeah, I can see your face. The mind's see, this is repulsion. This is repulsion. So the mind thinks in the unenlightened state, the way to solve this is to push it away. I never want to see snakes ever. But that doesn't solve your problem, because you're going to see snakes. You live in a world with other beings. You need to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in and train it to be comfortable and content. I'll give you another example. Like, let's just say that you didn't like large crowds and you were repulsed by large crowds and you don't want to be around large crowds. So I would encourage you to go around large crowds, and you're going to need to put your mind in that situation in order to train it to be comfortable. In modern psychology, they call this exposure therapy, where you expose the mind to the things that it's repulsed by or fearful of. And now through that exposure, the mind gains its stability and its contentedness, because you need to replace whatever memories you have in your mind, because there's somewhere in your mind, either as a child or in a previous life, your mind is clinging to the idea that when I see a snake, that's something bad. And now something bad's going to happen to me. And you need to replace this and uncondition your mind and purify your mind and clear this out, where you can see, I can look at pictures of snakes and I don't get hurt. I can look at preserved snakes and I don't get hurt. I can even look at real live snakes and I don't get hurt. So you need to replace that, and you need to eliminate the conditioning and purify your mind so it's no longer clinging to this as thinking snakes are bad, something bad's going to happen to me. And that's what will get rid of your fear. Whereas if you just try to keep pushing this away, you're never going to solve it. You have to confront it and put the mind into the situation that it doesn't want to be in, whether it's snakes or large crowds or any number of different things. Make sense? Oh, okay. Up to you. You guys do it however you like, but that's how you eliminate your fear. And it's a challenge, right? The mind doesn't want to do it. Just sitting here talking about it, you're repulsed by it. And that's going to continue to exist in your mind as long as you hold on to this and you don't put your mind in that situation and train it to be comfortable. Mm-hmm. All right. Great questions. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I like to ask questions about senses and actions. Mm-hmm. Just now, what you said is very helpful. The wisdom is to find the permanent joy, the permanent happiness instead of the conditional happiness. So the one thing is it seems to me, we need to be aware of the senses. That is to lower down the sensational trigger. So, yeah, my question is, should we mute our senses or to let go our sensational joy to achieve the permanent thing?
You're not muting your senses, and you're not eliminating the object itself. What you're doing is you're training the mind to no longer have longing, yearning for it. So you're using your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, that whenever you have contact and you see the discontentedness arising, you cut off and let go of the discontentedness as a bodily sensation. And more, this trims back the craving, desire, attachment. One of the ways you can think about it is like a wild bush. There's this wild bush that's growing. And what you need to do is you need to trim it back and trim it back and trim it back and trim it back. And then you need to uproot it so that it never grows again. And then ultimately, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to enjoy everything and anything. Right? So you're not muting your senses. You're just training your mind to not have a longing, yearning for one thing or another. Instead, you can just maintain your peacefulness and joyness no matter what. So for example, I'll give you another example. Say like you go to this restaurant and they have this wonderful carrot cake or cheesecake or chocolate cake or something like this. And now let's just say you eat that dessert the first time, you're like, oh my goodness, this is the best chocolate cake ever. I want to come back here tomorrow and get another piece of chocolate cake. Oh, this is so good. You get so happy because of this chocolate cake. Well, now you leave and you come back the next day. And when you come back the next day, they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have any chocolate cake. Now you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed because the mind's longing, yearning for it. So in that situation, you don't need to mute your senses. What you need to do is be able to see the discontentedness, see the frustration arising as a bodily sensation and cut it off and let it go and cut it off and let it go and cut it off and let it go. And as you do, eventually you'll get to the point where you can go to the restaurant and you're like, hey, I'd like to have a piece of chocolate cake. And they're like, oh, great, we have a piece of chocolate cake. Here you go. And you're like, oh, great. And you can enjoy that chocolate cake. But then the next day when you come and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have your chocolate cake. And you're like, okay, no worries. Do you have apple pie? Do you have fruit? Or maybe I just won't get a dessert at all. You can maintain your contentedness, because as long as you have craving in your mind, you can only be happy when they have that chocolate cake. And when they don't have it, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And what you would like to be able to get to is where you can enjoy all aspects of your life, but you're not forming your inner feelings based on these things. That's what the mind's doing in the unenlightened state is, if I get this piece of chocolate cake, I will be happy. But if I don't get it, then I will be sad. And because this chocolate cake is not permanent, it is impermanent, then you're not going to be able to get that chocolate cake permanently. So you're just setting yourself up, you're sabotaging yourself, that you're going to experience these painful feelings. So wherever you see the mind getting ready to experience a conditioned pleasant feeling, you would like to cut off the conditional pleasant feeling. Because if you allow the mind to have the conditioned pleasant feeling, that condition is not permanent. So therefore, it's going to experience the conditional painful feeling. It's only a matter of time. So this is the real important thing to understand, is that these conditional pleasant feelings are just as much of the problem as the painful ones, that you're not interested in allowing your mind to continue to form happiness or excitement based on a condition, because that condition is not permanent. So now when you get rid of that and your mind is no longer doing that, you can be happy no matter what. If they have the chocolate cake, great, I'll enjoy the chocolate cake. Oh, they don't have the chocolate cake? No big deal. Right? I can still maintain my contentedness. That's what you would like to be able to get to. So you're not muting your senses. You're just being observant of the mind whenever it's having craving, desire, attachment, so that you can take action or apply right effort to cut it off and let it go and retrain the mind so it doesn't form these conditioned feelings any longer.
Okay, can I ask one more question?
You can ask 10 more if you like.
Oh, thank you.
20, 30, 50.
Well, it might be a relatable, similar questions. So I'm thinking, if we're achieving permanent happiness, the inner peace and joy. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, maybe is it a good idea to get away somehow, to keep a distance from those external disturbance or the conditional happiness? For instance, I was living nearby Chiang Mai University. So outside there's a night market, so many interesting food. So I was really tempted last night by some of it. But when I was walking along the road, I realized there's no end. If I just go there, so I will eat more and more and more. So I said, okay, I'll get away from this conditional happiness. I'm going to go back home. So my question is, life is full of these temporary temptations, so many of it. Social media, food, everything. So time is full of those temporary joys. So I'm thinking, should we do nothing or should we do less in order to live more inside?
Okay, so there's what you're going to do during your period of time that you're training your mind to get to enlightenment, and there's how you're going to function as your mind is actually enlightened. So on your way to enlightenment, where you have cravings, desires, attachments in your mind, you're going to need to distance yourself from the object that the mind is craving, right? So say, for example,
Can I interrupt a bit? Mm-hmm. So when you say distance from that object, are you saying we are physically distant, or are we mentally distancing?
Both. Yeah, you're going to need to physically distance yourself from it. So let's just say, I don't know, say you really want to eat ice cream. And if you get ice cream, it's like the best day ever, right? And now when you don't have ice cream, you're grumpy and you're irritable. This is conditional happiness. So now you're going to need to distance yourself from that ice cream. You're going to need to go away from ice cream for a period of time. And you're going to need to probably slowly do that, where you put more and more distance between you. Or now if you eat it every day, you're going to need to maybe eat it every other day for a period of time. And then move to once every 3 days, once every 6 days, once every 10 days, once a month, once every 2 months. And eventually you get to the point where it's been 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 months and you haven't had any ice cream and you're perfectly content and perfectly joyful. And now you know that craving's gone, that you no longer have that craving because you've been away from it for a really long time and your mind's still joyful without it, right? So now you might think like, I enjoy ice cream. Let me now enjoy some ice cream, but I'm not going to have conditioned feelings over it. Your mind has been trained. You don't have a craving, desire, attachment anymore. So now you can start eating ice cream again if that's what you would like to do. But now you're not forming your feelings based on it. So now you have an ice cream and it's like, oh, great, this tastes really good. Or if you go to the store and they don't have ice cream, they're like, oh, sorry, our machine's broken, or the electric is out and all our ice cream melted. We don't have any. You're like, all right, no big deal. Where in the past, you would have got grumpy, you would have got irritable, you would have got annoyed. Now you can see your mind is fully transformed with that particular craving, that it's gone. And now you might decide to start eating ice cream, but it's not going to probably be every day. And you're definitely not going to be forming your feelings on that. So you will need to distance yourself from these objects for a period of time, training your mind to let go. And then when you know that the mind has let go, you can slowly integrate it back into your life for things that aren't harmful. Right? If you were addicted to cocaine, for example, you need to get rid of that 100%, right? In order to get to enlightenment, you can never go back to it, right? But if it's something like ice cream or something like this, you'll be able to eliminate your craving by first distancing yourself from it, allowing the mind to mature and release through practicing breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. Sometimes you need to expose your mind to whatever it's having a craving, desire, attachment for, so that it can let it go. And now ultimately you can integrate some of those things back into your life if they're not harmful to you or to other people. Yeah. Okay. Very good questions. Excellent. So let's go to the next one. Or let me check online and see if we have any questions here. I don't see any in Zoom. And don't see any in YouTube. So there's none in Facebook either. Okay, so let's go to the next one. This is chapter 32. Would someone like to read this one? Oh, Steve? Yeah. So one of the things that the unenlightened mind does is it's shy. It's like, I don't want to be out there. The mind's holding on. It's like, I want to be perceived by others in a certain way. So the mind is holding on and it feels this shyness. An enlightened being doesn't have shyness. So what you might need to do, and what I suggest like here, is you need to put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. And as you do that, you'll see that that shyness will go away. If you just stay in the back corner, you won't actually eliminate your shyness because it's going to hold on and want to be perceived by others in a certain way. But if you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to talk on the mic and I'm going to read, and then you'll break through that shyness, exposing your mind to it, and then you'll see that you're more and more comfortable in a public setting. So go ahead, Steve.
Dwelling in breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks. That monk gains at will, without trouble or difficulty, that concentration through the development and cultivation of which no shaking or trembling occurs in the body, and no shaking or trembling occurs in the mind. And what concentration is it through the development and cultivation of which no shaking and trembling occurs in the body, and no shaking or trembling occurs in the mind? It is, monks, when concentration of mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation has been developed and cultivated, that no shaking or trembling occurs in the body, and no shaking or trembling occurs in the mind. And how, monks, is concentration of mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation developed and cultivated so that no shaking or trembling occurs in the body and no shaking or trembling occurs in the mind? Here, monks, a monk, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, straightened his body, and set up mindfulness in front of him. Just mindful he breathes in and mindful he breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe it. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe out. He trains thus, calming the mind, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe in. He trains thus, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing joy, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing joy, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing peacefulness, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experience peacefulness, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus, calming the mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus, calming the mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, gladdening the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, gladdening the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, concentrating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, concentrating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, liberating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, liberating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on fading away, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on fading away, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on elimination, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on elimination, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe out. It is, monks, when concentration of mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, has been developed and cultivated in this way that no shaking or trembling occurs in the body and no shaking or trembling occurs in the mind. I too, monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still unawakened but intent on awakening, not yet fully enlightened, genuinely dwelt in this dwelling. While I genuinely dwelt in this dwelling, neither my body nor my eyes became fatigued, and my mind, by not clinging, was liberated from the taints. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may neither my body nor my eyes become fatigued, and may my mind, by not clinging, be liberated from the taints. The same concentration of mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, should be closely attended to.
Thank you, sir. This is the teaching of the Buddha on developing concentration and developing breathing mindfulness and meditation. For those of you guys that studied the Eightfold Path with me, I show you guys in the Eightfold Path the right concentration, and I say the way you practice that is through meditation and through practicing singleness of mind. This is where the Buddha is teaching you about how to develop concentration. Using breathing mindfulness meditation is one of those things. And you'll see in other parts of his teachings where he talks about singleness of mind and developing that. Because in the Eightfold Path, he talks about the jhanas, which are the results of practicing the Eightfold Path. But here, he's talking about developing concentration and using breathing mindfulness meditation to be able to do that. Notice he's talking about no shaking or trembling occur in the body or the mind. By the time you get to enlightenment, there's no shaking of the mind. The mind's stable, it's steady. Right now, if you have agreeable or disagreeable contact through the sense spaces, your mind will be shaken up, right? You'll be frustrated, agitated, or annoyed, or fearful, or guilty, or shameful, whatever the discontent feeling is, like stress or anxiety or what have you, your mind will be shaken up by that. But if you are interested in getting to that unshakable mind, the liberation of mind where the mind is free from these strong feelings, it's breathing mindfulness meditation, which is one of the primary trainings that you would like to employ. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is that if you aspire to get to this point in time where your mind is unshakable, it's breathing mindfulness meditation that you're going to need to develop. And that's what's going to help you to develop that awareness of the bodily sensations so that you can cut them off and let them go when there's a rising of discontentedness coming. So breathing mindfulness meditation is a core central practice that you're developing. And then here, what he's giving you is his guidance on meditation. All of this is basically like when I came in this morning and I started class and I was like, okay, everyone, here's what I do with chanting. Here's what you can do with the body. Then we were in meditation and I was like, okay, breathing in, breathing out, experiencing the full breath. What I've done here is I've consolidated what the Buddha teaches into a concise teaching that you can, in a matter of minutes, start to actually be meditating and getting the benefit of that. But this is the detail. This is what the Buddha is teaching you. Notice that he talks about folding the legs crosswise. Notice that he's talking about straightening up his body, right? This is what I was talking to you about keeping the upper body erect because it keeps the mind attentive and alert, right? He's not explaining to you the why necessarily here, but I'm explaining to you the why as I'm teaching you. And then setting up mindfulness in front of him. What this is awareness of mind, that you're not interested in just plopping down into meditation. You would like to set up some mindfulness. And that's what the chanting is. When you're chanting, you're developing awareness of mind and awareness of breath so you can ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation. And that's what he's talking about here with setting up mindfulness in front of you. Whether you do chanting or not before meditation is up to you, but you're going to need to have some kind of awareness of mind easing into meditation, that you don't just plop down into meditation. And now what he's talking about here is essentially establishing the breath. Right? That's what we did, that very first part of the meditation. I just helped you establish a nice, natural, gradual breath. Then he talks about if he breathes in long or short, he knows that he breathes in long and short. What he's talking about here is fixating the mind to the breath, that you would like to fixate the mind to the breath, because the length of your breath is going to be different from person to person, but you need to have your mind fixated on the breath. And there's another teaching where he talks about cutting off and letting go, like what I guided you to be able to do. But here, he's now talking about, okay, experiencing the whole body in the bodily sensations. This is where you're developing the awareness of the body. So when you're in meditation, if you notice a little itch over here on your leg, you would like to just bring your mind back to the breath. You're aware of it, but you're not allowing the mind to be affected by that impermanence, and you're just bringing the mind back to the breath. The itch isn't what we're talking about with the bodily sensations in terms of the arising of discontentedness. That's based in craving, desire, attachment. But the way your mind starts developing this awareness is in meditation. When you have those little itches and stuff like that, that's your mind starting to become aware of the body. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is to become aware of the body. And now calm those bodily sensations. Cut off and let go, understanding those bodily sensations are impermanent. They're going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. And then slowly but surely, he's teaching you all the other aspects of his meditation. And this is helping you to develop what's referred to as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And I teach this in the various classes and courses and retreats and the foundational programs, that what the Buddha is guiding you here to be able to do is develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness, having awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and what's referred to as mental objects. And if you haven't studied that with me, it's okay. You can always study in the foundational programs and learn those things. But this is the detail of, if you have ever been curious why David guides meditation the way that he does, it's coming from here. And I've consolidated this into a teaching that you're able to learn in a matter of minutes and then actually be getting the benefit out of that. So this is all the Buddha's detailed teachings on meditation. And then ultimately he continues down here where he talks about how he practiced this breathing mindfulness meditation extensively until his mind was liberated from the taints. What he's talking about here with taints is these are the pollutions of mind. These are the 10 fetters. The 10 fetters are the 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and he applied the tools and techniques to eradicate those out of the mind. Sometimes he refers to them as fetters, sometimes they're taints, sometimes he refers to them as pollutions or defilements. You can see these various ways that it refers to it. And an enlightened being has fully purified their mind of the 10 fetters. We refer to it as a fetter because during ancient times, if they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, like if you were a criminal or a prisoner, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. And what a fetter is a shackle, a chain, and a ball. And now you would be out in this field and you would be confined to this area. Where today we keep people in prison cells or jail cells, where they would attach a fetter to your leg during ancient times, and you would just be in this open field. So these 10 fetters, or these 10 pollutions, this is what's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. And when you purify your mind of these taints or these pollutions or these fetters, that's where the mind is now experiencing enlightenment. So he's saying, okay, when he generally dwelt in this breathing mindfulness meditation, neither his body nor his eyes became fatigued, in his mind as well, that it wasn't fatigued. So what you'll notice as your mind's getting closer and closer to enlightenment, you don't experience exhaustion. You don't experience fatigue. You'll need to sleep and you'll feel sleepy. but your mind's performing more optimally. And when your mind's tranquil, your body will be tranquil too. Like right now, if you get home at the end of your day and you feel like you've got a ton of bricks on your shoulders or you got a ton of bricks on your feet, this is because your mind's carrying around the burden of craving, desire, attachment. The mind is longing, yearning. And if you get things your way that day, you'll come home and you'll be like, this was a great day, man. It was so good. Because everything went your way. You got your cravings, desires, attachments fulfilled. But if you go out into the world carrying this burden of craving and things don't go your way, now you feel exhausted. You'll feel tired. But by the time you lay down the burden of carrying around craving, desire, attachment, every day is a wonderful day. You won't even notice any kind of fatigue because the mind isn't carrying around this burden, that the mind is bright and uplifted. So the Buddha here is saying, hey, this is how he did it with breathing, mindfulness, meditation. And then he's encouraging you. He says, hey, if you aspire to experience the same result where your mind is peaceful and joyful and you're not exhausted at the end of your day, it's breathing, mindfulness, meditation that led him to that. And of course, there's other teachings you need too. Otherwise, he would have just taught meditation and that's it. Sometimes people think that it's meditation that is all you need to get to enlightenment. But if that was the case, he would have just taught meditation. There wouldn't be 45 volumes of books that are this big. There's other things that you actually need to learn. And this book series has consolidated it so that you can learn it in a relatively straightforward period of time. And now you can gradually cultivate your mind, develop your mind, and experience this freedom or this liberation from the pollutions of mind, from the taints or from these strong feelings. So any questions here on this particular chapter? I see Roxanne has a question. So Roxanne, if you'd like to go ahead, you're welcome to unmute.
Yeah, a little bit further up, he's talking about reflection.
Yes.
I'm just wondering,
Are you asking me what that means? It looks like where your audio.
Meditation.
We lost your audio there, Roxanne.
And all of that.
Your connection froze up on us.
Well, it's just. Okay.
There's some impermanence here in her internet connection.
Yeah, hang on. I'll type it in.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, yes, I can explain, Roxanne. So what, she sent it in by chat. Okay, so what the Buddha is explaining to you here when he's saying reflecting on impermanence is that you need to understand not only when you're meditating, but in daily life, you need to deeply penetrate into your mind to understand that the universal truth of impermanence, that everything around you is impermanent because the mind is craving permanence and wanting things to be permanent. Until you be able to see the truth that everything around you is impermanent, your mind's going to keep craving permanence. So the Buddha is teaching you that even during meditation, you need to be able to understand and reflect on impermanence. So when you're in meditation and you see this itch in the body come up, you need to remind yourself it's impermanent, right? Or say you're in your meditation and some memory from the past, some traumatic experience that's happened to you in the past arises. You need to remind yourself this is impermanent and just train your mind to let go. Because what's happening with this is in the past, you might have had a certain experience and now the mind is clinging to this and holding on to it. And some people refer to this as trauma. Whereas if you have these bad memories or you have these experiences in the past, your mind can let this go. You don't need to hold on to these things. But if you thought that these things were permanent, your mind would be holding on to this and it wouldn't be willing to let it go. So you're going to need to have this reflection of impermanence deeply penetrate into the mind of impermanence. And then that, along with that, the reflection on fading away, understanding this arising, this changing and fading away, reflecting on elimination, that you're cutting off and letting go. That's what these next two are, that you're making sure that you understand that, yes, when things are arising in the mind, they are impermanent. They're going to fade away. You can eliminate them and you can let them go. And you need to be able to understand that that's a process that can occur. Where oftentimes people think that when a traumatic experience has happened to them, I can never get over this. I will never get over this ever. right? And this is what the mind thinks, and now the mind holds on to it, and it's self-sabotaging itself. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is to understand that these things are all impermanent, and train your mind to let them go. Whenever things are arising in your mind, let go, and then ultimately come back to your breath. Yeah. Okay, so there. Any other questions on any of this? Let me see if we have any on YouTube or Facebook. Okay, so I'm going to end class here by just thanking all of you guys for coming to the class. In this Pali Canon English study group, we study 10 chapters each week. The students are on their own studying as an independent study, where they're reading the words of the Buddha, they're reading my words. And here at the temple, I just go to whatever chapters we get to. You know, sometimes it's 3, 4, 5. Very rarely do we study all 10 chapters because we're doing meditation, we're having some deeper discussions. But in the evening on Saturdays at 9 p.m., I teach from home in my home studio, and I live stream this, and people from all over the world attend. Even today here, people attend from all over the world. But in the evenings, we don't do meditation together. Students will oftentimes be doing it before the class. They will meditate on their own. So that way I can focus and make sure I teach all 10 chapters. So students will sometimes read the chapters and they'll ask me questions privately, or they ask questions in class. These classes are more of a study group. It's not like a set defined amount of things that we study. So the goal is for each student, if they aspire to learn, is to study 10 chapters a week. And then that way they're gradually learning, but they've already got a foundation. This isn't usually where somebody starts in their learning, is studying the original words of the Buddha like this. They will usually start in a foundational program, which if you guys would like to do that, I teach the foundational program every month. I have retreats that I teach, that I have courses. They're all available at no cost. They're available to you, and you can attend here in Thailand. You can attend online because I live stream them, and they're even recorded. So if you can't attend live, you can watch the recordings, and they have been recorded many times. So if you're interested in developing a foundation in the path to enlightenment, I would suggest starting with the first book, volume 1, and then from there you can gradually progress in some of our programs on Sunday and Wednesday, or some of our other courses and programs and retreats. And then if you would like to learn all 10 chapters in each individual book, that's where you might decide to attend the Saturday classes in the evening time, 9 p.m. Thai time. So thank you all for joining here. If you would like to come tomorrow, you're more than welcome to. We have chapter 17 from volume 1, which is eliminating fears. Are you really scared? What you're going to learn is that your mind isn't really scared. It just has craving, desire, attachment. It's just holding on, and there's a way to let this go so you don't have to have these fears, so you don't have to be paralyzed by your fear. It's no fun walking around the world with fear. So I'm going to teach you how to eliminate that. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to get together with students here. We're going to do meditation together, and then I just open up to any and all questions that you guys have. So enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you do, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and enjoy. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.